Are you ready?
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Northern Prosperity Law Center here on SovereignRadio.com.
Hey, how's it going? This is the Freedom Man. We decided we're going to do a special edition tonight. There's a lot of strange things going on in the universe. Stranger things going on in America. This is the Freedom Man. We got commonly known as Sam. The two of us decided to do a sneak attack special edition for tonight. We've been noticing that our ratings have actually been doing quite well, and since it seems as though our audience is growing, we'd like to maybe every now and then throw in a special edition, or
maybe it'll become a regular thing if it really catches on.
And we're talking about getting some other shows on. We've had other people that are interested in actually taking up some of the time and getting in here. So hopefully we'll be able to get some more things going on.
Now, I would love to get more radio hosts and show them how to do this. And what we do is we have a streaming service that we have full access to 24 hours a day, 365 days, 366 days.
It's leap year.
Yeah. So we're on all the time. We have the ability to be on all the time and have other people have assigned times to chime in to do their own show, and it's really easy. I mean, like, what's the basic equipment that we have to get the show out?
Well, it's just a computer, and then
you got your computer with Skype. I got my laptop and some very simple, easy to use free software.
Yeah, it's not really too difficult. Last week when you were up in New Hampshire, I downloaded a little program that allowed me to stream my computer audio out to the streaming server, and I was actually able to run the Windows Media Player, Skype, YouTube, and actually you guys called in from New Hampshire through your Skype, and was all going through this little teeny program that took like 2 minutes to set up on my PC.
From New Hampshire, what I was using was my cell phone with the Skype program on it.
And you guys were coming in fine. Seemed all right. So it's not complicated nowadays. The technology is at a point where we can pretty much speak to the entire world as it happens live. This is all part of the prophecy that really actually was predicted thousands of years ago, that in the end times that people would be able to see anything that's going on in the world. They'd be able to see it happening live. Yep. And it's kind of really pretty wild when you think about it. I remember being a kid and my dad talking about how in the end times there's going to come a time when someone on the other side of the world would be able to see something that's happening live on this side of the world and vice versa. And this has actually become a reality now with the satellites and with the internet. And, the technology that we have now. It's pretty amazing, the capabilities, things that are going on.
Wait, where I was going with that was, like, anybody who's listening who has something to say, if you're interested in doing a show, contact us at admin@sovereignradio.com, and we can start talking and possibly set something up.
Admin@sovereignradio.com?
Yeah.
All right, so that's all you have to do is send an email to admin@sovereignradio.com, and Sam will be able to check that and hook up, get you a spot, work out some kind of a schedule to get you to be able to get in, and we'll have it set up to where you can log in and start your show, do whatever you want to do. But anyways, I don't know what it was. Something got into me today. I was watching some prophecy stuff. There was some prophetic things that happened back in 2011 and 2012.
I thought it was a lot of chicken. We had some of the best fried chicken in Central Falls today.
Well, we did have some chicken, and while we were having chicken, but I mean, earlier during the day while I was at work, I was looking at a few videos, and one of the things I was listening to, this guy named Perry Stone, who's I guess like an evangelical minister, talks a lot about end times prophecy, and he was talking about what went on back in 2011, 2012, leading up to the whole thing with the Mayan calendar, and nothing really happened in 2012 that was significant that we could actually notice. There was a lot of hype. A lot of people got, scared into doing a lot of things that were unnecessary, waiting for something, the end of the world.
I think there might have been some swine flu, right?
Yeah, there was all kinds of scares. I mean, and he even mentioned...
And then last year was bird flu, and then this year it's Ebola.
Oh, yeah. All this stuff happens.
Every year there's a little something.
There was the Y2K scare. He mentions at one point, he talks about back in 1999, at the end of the last century, people were afraid that was going to be the end of the world. I mean, how crazy is that? Just because computer program might not roll over with the proper date, people were all scared that the power system was going to come down and we were going to go into a blackout. And now there's this thing that's going around the internet that's talking about, well, Sam, you actually posted it. What exactly was that about?
Okay, I came across this article. Somebody had shared it with me over the... You
got to get closer to your mic. You're doing something.
Okay. just leaning back a little. Somebody had posted something on my Facebook, or farce book, fascist book, whatever you want to call it, saying that the last few days of December, we will be drifting through a solar storm or a galactic storm of unprecedented size. And basically for 3 days, we will not be having any sunlight hit the planet.
Well, it says, 21, 22, and 23 December, so right around the winter solstice. 3 days of darkness. Now, I don't think that I don't recall whether this has ever actually happened in modern history, anything like this. So if this is true, it's quite a big deal to have like 3 days of darkness. Could scare a lot of people. If there's even such a possibility that such a thing could happen.
It's how dark would it be? I mean, like, is it going to be a cloudy day? Is it going to be like nighttime? What are the implications of that? Like how would that affect the weather?
Well, I'm thinking that it would be similar to having a solar eclipse that just lasts for 3 days. But yeah, is it going to be a total blackout? I mean, is it going to just like you say, be like a really cloudy day? Who knows? There could be something.
This article does say that it was NASA. The head of NASA, Charles Bolden, made this announcement and asked everyone to remain calm. I went to the link that it said was the source, science.nasa.gov or science.nasa.gov, and I didn't see any details about that announcement. So,
well, one prediction is it's going to be like the Hollywood movie The Purge, where everybody just goes out and starts killing everybody for 3 days. Mm-hmm. I don't see that happening.
I mean, like, it says that this will be the product of a solar storm, which I'm having kind of difficulty with that because a solar storm to me is a storm that's being projected out from the sun. So how that prevents the Earth from receiving any light, that's not too well explained.
Yeah, the only thing that I could think of is if the gamma radiation hits our solar system and literally reflects the light all back to the sun, and so it doesn't. So most of the light doesn't get through the solar system or through the atmosphere because it's being, hit with gamma and causing everything to ionize. And the ionization layer might, in the ionosphere might act as a mirror and reflect the sunlight back rather than letting it through.
And then the article just mentions it's the largest in the last 50 years for a period of 72 hours.
Well, we'll have to see. That's coming up in a couple of months. But anyways, there's a clip I wanted to play that has a lot to do with some of these end-time prophecies and how people have made false predictions so many times. And then we're going to talk. I want to talk a little bit about the upcoming blood moons, because that seems to be related to this whole blood moons, blackout of the sun. These are the signs in the sky that was predicted from the Bible like 2,000 years, or actually I think it was more than 2,000 years ago. Some of these things were predicted that in the end times we would see signs in the sky, and people are kind of starting to freak out because we're seeing all these signs in the sky. But whether they're really as unusual as people think they are, or if it's something that actually occurs every now and again, 50, 100 years. But people forget, generations forget. The children don't know because they're just growing up. They've never seen anything like this before. Parents get freaked out because they may not just remember, or maybe grandparents didn't say, oh, yeah, remember back in 1927 when we had that blackout? I remember my grandparents telling me about a tornado that came through Massachusetts, and my grandfather had his car in a repair shop, and the tornado hit the repair shop and caused the roof to collapse in and crush his car back in like the 1930s. And when I was a kid, we never even heard of tornadoes coming through this area. Then wouldn't you know, a few years ago, we actually had a tornado rip down through Massachusetts. So these things may just occur naturally from time to time, but a few generations might go by in between and nothing happens. So, if you haven't seen or heard of anything like this for 30, 40 years or 50 years or 100 years, you might think that it's just very unusual for it to happen. And then it truly is unusual, but that doesn't mean that it's unnatural necessarily. So I'd like to play this clip if I may. If I can find it here. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, you're coming in loud and clear.
Right here, I'm gonna play this clip here. Let's see what it sounds like.
So I'm going to give a quote. One reason there is interest in the Mayan calendar of 2012 is on the winter solstice of 2012, the sun will align with the center of the Milky Way. Now, this is really going to happen. They're not just predicting this. This will happen in 2012 for the first time in 26,000 years. This means that whatever energy typically streams to Earth from the center of the Milky Way, and we're talking about electromagnetic energy, will be disrupted on 12/21/12 at 11/11. They even have the time down. Some believe that sunspot cycles could wreak havoc on the Earth and on our atmosphere. Now, what happens with huge sunspot cycles, it affects the electromagnetic field around the Earth, which affects satellites, which affects cell phones, which affects computers. Anything that is run through the atmosphere wireless could absolutely not work. Now, we're not trying to sound like Y2K here. Lord help us if we do that. Lord, how many of you know you're still eating those beans? Come on, talk to me. Okay, so I'm very careful here because I understand how people take certain things and can go way out with it. Now, see, let me tell you how serious some people are taking this. Some people have taken this so serious that in Norway, people are already preparing bunkers and storing seed and food underground, and they literally, Norway is into this huge, and they're saying the end of the world is coming in 2012. Now, first of all, let me say something. Even if the tribulation started tomorrow, okay, even if it started tomorrow, that would only be the middle of it, and the Bible tells you people survive the tribulation. Jesus comes back to rule on earth in the tribulation, and only 1/3 of everything is totally annihilated. The rest of it goes under judgment, but 1/3 is what's destroyed. So for people to get carried away and act like everything's going to blow up, everything's going to end, everybody needs to run to a cave, that is the wrong impression to give, especially to children of God. Jesus teaches, listen, this is important you hear this. Oh, I got to say this. It's important that you hear this, that Jesus compared his return to the days of Noah when nobody would know until the day, right? Nobody's going to know till the moment. But he said, as it was in the days of Lot and Noah. Are you ready for this? They're not in caves. They're not concerned about solar flares. They're not somewhere hiding. They're eating, drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage. In other words, there's going to be prosperity no matter what happens with the war in Iran, no matter how high oil goes up, no matter what happens economically, no matter what bank goes down today and comes back tomorrow. You read the Bible, and please remember this, there is extreme prosperity when Jesus shows up. Do you know why? Because that's what draws the people's attention away from him. Because everything gets bad, then goes back to normal. Then la-di-da. It's just like 9/11. 9/11 hit, everybody got saved. 2 months later, half of them are backslid again. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Things get bad and America prays. Things get prosperous and they forget God. So my point is, yes, there's going to be war, famines, pestilence. That's going to be going on. It's like two tracks. There's one track where they don't have their mind on God because everything's prospering. There's another track when everything's going crazy. So you got to remember that when you read Jesus coming back, it's going to be like a normal day and a normal time. And that's why he says it's going to shock everybody. Can I go ahead and preach this? You see, some of us think that there's going to be some unusual event, a major sign, and I believe it's possible. It may happen during the war of Gog and Magog. That may be the big event. I'll have to talk about more of that on Friday. But nonetheless, if you read the Bible, Jesus says, just like the days of Noah, they didn't know till the day. They didn't know that it was going to be wiped out till the day. And he says, they're going to be eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, partying, having a good time, and bam, I'm going to show up and take my folks away. I'm going to show up, whoop, it's going to be over with that quick. See? Just suddenly it's going to happen. So the point is, keep that in mind while we talk about this.
Okay. So, apparently, according to Perry Stone, who is the minister who was preaching in this clip, we're not going to know. We ain't even going to have a clue. In fact, people are going to be partying it up, having a good old time, and he says there's going to be prosperity in the world when Jesus returns, which is the second coming, and which is supposed to be, a lot of people believe, the end all of all things. But he's saying no. Now, here's a guy that's been preaching the Bible for a long time. His father was also a preacher, evangelical preacher, no less, talking about speaking in tongues and all kinds of other stuff. But here he is saying, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to be this gloom and doom, hiding in caves or any of that stuff. So I thought it was kind of interesting when I heard this today because it seems to go against a lot of what we've been hearing. A lot of people around the world talk about the end times and the signs of the end times and the signs in the sky and the signs in the blood moons. Well, we've been hearing about these blood moons. Now, I've been hearing about these blood moons for years. People talking about how that's going to be the end, the end of the world as we know it. And we talked about, the back in 2012, which is where this clip was coming from, was about how the Mayan calendar was supposed to be the end of everything. And people get all worried about it. Hollywood did real good. Hollywood made a lot of money selling these movies, all these end times movies. But really the bottom line is what he just said was it's going to be a prosperous time. And people are going to turn away from God because they're going to be so busy with their prosperity, they're not going to be praying. They're not going to be worshiping God or any of that. So I just was kind of hoping that maybe I could set a few people's minds at ease and, maybe not worry so much about, the end of the world and all this prophecy that's coming up. But just go into the, because of that, I guess what started me was that 3 days of darkness, people talking about that 3 days of darkness. Now, Sam, this is supposedly some guy from NASA. What do you think their angle is? Are they trying to make some money off of this deal somehow?
Oh, NASA?
I mean, yeah. I mean, why would this guy who works for NASA? You said it's like the boss, the big top dog at NASA, right?
Well, from this news article that and I don't know how reliable it is. Just it sources NASA. It says that the head of NASA, Charles Bolden. So that's the name we need to look up. So it's Charles Bolden.
Is this one of those onion websites or something now? I mean,
I can't tell you that. I mean, like they got the link that does go directly back to the NASA website, but nothing regarding that particular quote or anything that stands out as having to do with, like,
So they
we're
link
going
back-
into 3 days of darkness.
They link back to NASA's website, but NASA's website says nothing about it.
Not that I could find. I didn't do a deep, thorough look. I just browsed at the front page there. It just takes you right to the home page.
No, that sounds a little suspicious to me.
Then there's a little note that in response of light beings to questions Monique Matthew by his members from heaven to earth, she wrote, "The 3 days of darkness will actually take place. This will be an extremely difficult time for humanity." So,
What, 3 days?
yeah.
3 days is going to be
But
extreme.
this is I don't understand why that note's there in this little article blurb.
Well, I
So
guess
I think there's a little bit more research to do is this really a credible news source?
I don't know. It sounds like a lot of hype to me. I'll be interested to see what happens on the winter solstice this year, if there's anything even close.
I mean, like, I can tell you, we posted it on the Northern Prosperity website, and the comments have been pretty interesting.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I can see that there's 24.
Tamara had some interesting stuff that went back to the blood moons and believing
Well, that's
in
why
Jesus.
that's what got me started on the whole blood moons thing, is because there's 3 days of darkness, and then I saw some people talking about Nibiru, like one friend of ours was saying, well, it's not gonna be a solar storm, it's gonna be Nibiru passing in front of the sun,
Right.
that's gonna cause the darkness. I mean, we've been talking a lot about Nibiru, and that could cause like some sort of a really extreme eclipse that could last 3 days, I suppose.
Somebody posted a nice little pictogram saying, with the guy from that alien show on the History Channel. I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens.
The guy with the weird hairdo, yeah, that guy is so goofy looking. It's funny. But anyway, this stuff comes up back.
That was a funny little conversation. Like, Tammy's like, they aren't aliens. They are angels who were cast out of heaven because they were evil.
Well, yeah,
and,
the evil.
And then somebody else is like, okay, evil aliens.
Could be evil aliens. It could be. Well, they certainly
That's
are
all fun.
aliens, because I don't think they were born here on planet Earth. Either way, but that's kind of the reason why. I was really kind of wanted to have this special show tonight, because I think people really need to kind of take a few deep breaths, relax, and there's a lot going on, but I don't know that anything that's going on is necessarily 100% completely out of the ordinary. So I had a little bit of curiosity about the blood moon, so I went to look up, come to find out that the blood moons, the 4 blood moons that are coming up right now, happen to coincide with the Jewish holidays of, let's see, so April, there was one in April of this year, and then there was another one earlier this month in October, which coincided with Passover and the Feast of Tabernacles. And the same thing is going to happen next year. Passover and Feast of Tabernacles, there's going to be another eclipse of the moon, which is what they call these blood moons. When the moon goes into a eclipse of this type, what happens is the planet Earth actually blocks the sun, so that it makes the moon, it looks like it's a full moon, but then it turns turns red, because it's actually going through the corona of the Earth, which if you notice, if you look at the sky at night, a lot of times you'll see red sky. Red sky at night, sailors delight. Red sky in morning, sailors take warning. Well, that red sky is the sun refracting, the light of the sun refracting through the Earth's atmosphere. And when that is cast onto the moon, it makes it look red. So the redness of our atmosphere is actually cast on the moon, makes it look red. Now, that happens to be something that happens a lot more frequently than we ever originally thought. I did not know this, but I got an article here that says that the blood moons, it says something like that happened. This phenomenon of 4 consecutive blood moons coinciding with Jewish feast days has only occurred 10 times since 1 AD, and only 3 times since 1492 AD. The 3 times since 1492 are as follows. There was a tetrad in 1493 to 94, a tetrad in 1949 to 1950, then again in 1967 to 1968, and then, of course, we're having it this year and next year. The one in 1492, of course, was right around the time of the Spanish Inquisition. And then and they were saying that Christopher Columbus was actually Jewish and that he came to America to escape the Inquisition. That's a whole nother conspiracy that we could talk about. And then there's the nation of Israel was reborn. You know, the United Nations declared Israel a sovereign nation back in 1948, which the following years were the tetrad of 49 to 50. And then the city of Jerusalem was reunited because it had been broken. I guess it had been broken up, into the Muslims and the Jews were fighting over it. The Christians were there, and so it was actually divided into three parts. But I guess it says here the city of Jerusalem was reunited during the tetrad of 67 and 68, and it just so happens that these blood moons happen to coincide with Jewish holidays rather frequently, but it seems, I guess they're saying a little bit more frequently than usual. But I didn't even know. I thought when this 4 blood moons in a row, this tetrad, I thought it was like once in like every 5,000 years. But it turns out that it's actually a lot more frequent than I had thought. But it just so happens that there are even more sometimes. There's another clip I want to play, which we'll wait till a little later in the show, but there's another clip that talks about how there are actually eclipses, sometimes as many as 7 times in 1 year. Did you know that?
No.
Sam?
Hello? No, I didn't know that.
Hey, can you imagine having 7 eclipses in 1 year?
That's.
I never even knew that was possible, but apparently there have been a few times in history.
That's an elementary school teacher's dream.
Well,
do you remember doing that little experiment in elementary school? You go outside, you have like a piece of paper or something that you use to block.
Yeah, it was
kind of like the edge of the eclipse.
Yeah, there was a trick way of doing it without going blind, but yeah, it's probably not a wise thing to look at. Well, it's not a wise thing to look at a solar eclipse. A lunar eclipse, though, that doesn't hurt your eyes at all.
Right.
But the solar eclipses, usually that happened during the daytime, and then the teachers would try to educate us about eclipses and stuff. I remember people looking at the solar eclipse through like a welding mask or something like that. But even that, they said, is really not a very good idea. But I think there's a trick. You can make a hole in a piece of paper and then cast the shadow down onto another.
Yeah,
I remember actually doing something of that nature to see sunspots through my telescope, where you take the telescope and you refract the image onto a white screen, and you can actually see the sunspots on the sun.
Yeah,
but that's broad daylight. You got to be looking at the sun. You can't do that at nighttime. But yeah, it would definitely be very educational. But the thing is, what they never taught us was, how often does this happen? They made it. It always seemed like it was like the rarest thing. I remember thinking when I was really young that these were really rare occurrences in eclipse. But it turns out there could be as many as 7 eclipses in a year, which has happened a few times in modern history. Well, I don't even know about modern history, but it's happened a few times in history that there's been as many as 6 or 7 eclipses in a single year. But these tetrads come along. The tetrads, what they're calling the tetrads, actually, because it lands on the Jewish calendar is set up with their whole calendar is, by the way, is counted by the cycles of the moon, not the cycles of the sun, which. Actually, months. The whole idea of a month was related to the moon, but we now the modern calendar that we commonly use is how many days it takes for the Earth to travel around the sun, which is 365 and a quarter approximately. So they divided that up into the different months. And that's the reason why we have months with some 28, 29, 30, 31 days.
Sure.
But originally, all the months had 30 days, approximately 30 days, and then they would have a holiday at the end where they would make up those extra 5 days. But apparently that has also changed in history too, because it was a time back in the 7th century BC where the calendar changed from 360 days to 365 days, which we talked on a previous show about a month or so ago. But anyway, there's still a lot more to come in this Prophecy special edition, or at least another clip I want to play. I don't know if you want to take a break, though, do an advertisement, or throw a song in or anything. I don't know if you had anything prepared for the half. I know we were probably going to make this sort of an abbreviated show since it's a special edition, but I do have a little bit more I wanted to go into.
Okay. Yeah, let's take a little quick break, and then we'll be back.
All right.
SovereignRadio.com.
I didn't speak up because I was not a writer. Then they came for the students. But I didn't speak up because I was not a student. Then they came for musicians. But I didn't speak up because I was not a musician. And then they came for the Greens, the Muslims, the trade unionists, Christians, and the Jews, the travelers, the homosexuals, the journalists, the artists, the thuggers, the doctors, the philosophers, the economists, the anarchists and the politicians, the nerds, the Europeans, the Americans, the communists, the hackers, illegals, the homeless. And I didn't speak up because I wasn't any of them. Any of them. And then they came for me. And there was no one left to speak up for me.
Power and money, but you are mortal. You know you cannot escape death, but immortality can be obtained,
Get your day's work done. 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 Or soon you'll be racing with the sun. Get your day's work done. 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 Or soon you'll be racing with the sun.
After man now I want to check out the greatest karate in the world. Love you. The bell. They said the man feel them for me like.
Get your day's work done. 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 Or soon you'll be racing with the sun. Make your plans. your day's work done.
Get your day's work done.
Or soon you'll be racing with the sun.
Racing with the sun.
Make your plans today.
Make your plans today.
For the evening dawn.
For the evening dawn.
Or you'll end up racing with the sun.
Racing with the
Welcome back to the Northern Prosperity Law Center on sovereignradio.com.
Hey, that was a pretty cool song. You know what that was reminding me of? I don't know why, but as I was listening to that song, I kept thinking about the transhumanist agenda.
Yeah.
You know, like for some reason getting your day's work done. Like really, it's all about work. Like slavery, like we are so enslaved that we think that people have actually become ingrained with this idea that all we are here on the planet for is to get a day's work done. I mean, what about just having a little bit of freedom and prosperity without having to work, you know?
Yeah, that song was by a bunch of DJs that kind of they got a little group going. They play mostly on the British Isles, but it's a band called Chinese Man. You want to see some great videos. You got really you can look it up on YouTube. They got some of the raddest videos out there with the animation that they do, and they really make it into an art form.
Wow, yeah, I think I've seen some of their stuff a while back. We've talked about them before. Well, I actually had an article. There was something that and if I could find it. No, I'm not going to be able to find it. I had this article I wanted to read. It's not even an article. It's something out of the U.S. Code. You know, it seems like more and more lately we've been getting into this place where, you know, there's a lot of terrible things going on in the government and in the world, you know, with the New World Order and people talking about how, you know, just terribly rotten our government is and how, you know, the people are slaves and how we've consented to being ruled by these tyrants in the District of Columbia. And, you know, I was looking at some stuff today because I'm actually studying this whole idea of sovereigns and the sovereign citizen movement and, you know, the fraud that's actually being, you know, perpetrated against the American people, and how the government has actually, they've actually passed laws about speaking out against the government. Now, this is the kind of thing that happened in Nazi Germany back, you know, probably in the 30s before World War II, where if you spoke poorly about Hitler or, you know, the Third Reich, they could throw you in jail indefinitely. You might even end up just getting killed. Just for speaking out. And yeah. I found
that happens. And, you know, I mean, like, if it's not done through codified law, it's still there, done under threat of duress from the police. Not all police, but there's certainly those officers out there. Just right now, before we started the show, yeah, I was watching a video that somebody shared where there was this officer that was threatening this teenager. He was threatening to beat the living poo out of this teenager for looking at him in the eye. You know, this is a public servant threatening to beat somebody up for looking him in the eye.
Just
for making eye contact.
Making eye contact. Well, so anyways, I happened to be looking through some of the U.S. Code. 18 U.S.C. Section 2384 is called seditious conspiracy. And I want to read this out loud because I don't want anyone to ever think that because Northern Prosperity Law Center speaks out against the government. We speak out against the government almost every show. At some point or another, we speak out against the government in the way that they, how our government, the United States of America, has turned into this tyrannical, fascist, communist, socialist, murdering, cops killing people in the streets every day. They got no right. They have no, because you're a cop and you got a badge, doesn't give you the right to murder somebody and get away with it. But this is what happens every day. People are cops are murdering people in the streets and getting away with it, But this is called seditious conspiracy, and I want to make it clear that that's not what this show is about. We are not, trying to overthrow the government. We're trying to fix what is a broken government. But here it is in the U.S. Code. For anybody that wants to look it up and read along, or if you're just interested in doing a little bit of studying, 18 U.S.C. has got a lot of good stuff. This is Section 2384, seditious conspiracy. And it says, if two or more persons, now Sam, you and I are on this show together right now. That's two people, right? So here, if we talk about this, we could go to jail. I'll read it to you. If two or more persons in any state or territory or in any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States conspire to overthrow, put down, or to destroy by force the government of the United States, or to levy war against them, or to oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States, or by force to seize, take, or possess any property of the United States contrary to the authority thereof, they shall each be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. So you can get fined and thrown in jail for 20 years just for being seditious, which means just to actually even talk about,
if that's not a big slap across the Declaration of Independence,
right?
I mean, what if the founding fathers who all did this were brought up against charges from the king? I mean, that's
exactly what would have happened. They would have been brought up into the English courts, and they probably, back in those days, they might have actually gotten hung. I don't know if they'd put them in jail for 20 years. It probably just said hanged, hanged in the public square or something like that.
Right.
So, anyway, as a little bit of, just as a bit of...
Oh, wait, you know what? They did do that. It was probably sedition against the king, but because there were a few of them that were wanted. They were wanted men, and, it led to a revolution.
It did. It absolutely did. And a lot of people had to die because of it, but... the same thing could happen here in America. And I'm certainly not trying to justify the use of violence or terrorism or anything like that. But we get labeled that way.
You know what? It's not terrorism. It's a founding principle of this country in our very first document, the Declaration of Independence. It says from time to time it's when the government no longer serves the needs of the people and has become tyrannical in its nature, we have the right to throw it off and start with a new government.
Yeah, that's what it says in the Declaration of Independence, and that's what they did in 1776. But of course, it's against the law to even talk about anything like that now. Of course, we talk about it here on the show all the time, but I mean, obviously, we're not promoting any kind of terrorism or any kind of violence. Certainly we're opposed to any kind of violent behavior, especially when it comes from the government or from the police. I mean, they're violent towards us all the time, and yet you don't see any of them being brought up on charges. This is the point that I'm trying to make, is that the government is supposed to serve the people, not kill people, right?
And then we've talked about de jure governments as opposed to de facto governments, and I believe that all the hosts on this show are under the opinion that this is, in fact, a de facto-led government that's kind of silently usurped the de jure republic.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I don't think there's any. Yeah, I think we've made that perfectly clear. Anybody who's listened to our show over the past couple of years, I mean, if you look in Black's Law Dictionary, there's pretty clear definitions for de facto and de jure, and basically, a de facto government. Well, yeah, actually, the whole entire legal system is not lawful, just because they are in the ruling class or the ruling power in this country doesn't mean that they're lawful. Most of the statutes and so-called laws of the United States are actually unlawful. And if you could take any one of these cases into the Supreme Court, most of the times you'll be able to get off because they're going to dismiss the charge rather than hear the case because they don't want to change these, so-called laws. But if you force them to do it, they'd actually have to rewrite their laws because some of their legalities are actually unlawful in a lot of cases. Just can't get enough people to stand up and actually, push back. I mean, it's just a matter of pushing back. We don't have to. Nobody has to be harmed. I mean, there's legal and lawful ways of doing things where people don't have to get harmed in the process. The only thing that it harms is their pocketbook. You see, what happens is the states, the cities, towns, counties, and the federal government are all making money off of oppressing the people, stealing from the people. The IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, is a bunch of crooks. They're stealing money from hard-working people. I guess maybe the way I got onto this was the song you were talking about, doing your day's work, and then at the end of the day, you don't even get all of your pay because the government thinks that they can take a chunk of your paycheck.
Yep.
Which is, as far as I'm concerned, it's unlawful. Anyway. So here we are. We're kind of winding down towards the end of the show. I wanted to talk a little bit more about these the blood moons or the end time prophecies. I think I just kind of feel as though I feel the need to put people's minds at ease about all this end times prophecy that you hear. People get all wrapped up, and I mean, there's a lot of people living in fear, unfortunately, because of a lot of the hype that goes on. A lot of TV, like especially Hollywood, they love to take advantage of fear-mongering. Look at all the scary movies that there are, Halloween coming up, right? So, the end of the week is Halloween. I think let's put a little bit of scary stuff out there for you. But there is, all this end time stuff, and I really want people to set their minds at ease and relax, take a deep breath, live your life, enjoy, what time you have on this planet. Praise God. I really honestly do believe that if you do get yourself in tune with God's plan, that you will be a lot happier all the way around. But remember that the government is not your God. Now, if that's seditious, too fucking bad. So, excuse my language. Damn it, I'm going to have to bleep that out. I didn't want to use a swear, but if the government in the District of Columbia thinks that they are God and they're going to rule over us, I have to beg to differ, because I do not worship the District of Columbia or anybody or anything in it. And we're going to talk a lot more about that in the next few episodes. I think we're going to try steering back towards some of the lawful discussions that we've had, try to sort out the differences between the legal and the lawful. We've got a lot of things coming up. This Friday's show, we're going to talk a lot more about the police state.
You know what I'd really like to get into, but with the election right around the corner, at least in Rhode Island, really. We got that question 3 is the whether or not to have the Constitutional Convention for Rhode Island.
Yes, that's going to be on the state Rhode Island state ballot,
specifically for the Rhode Island Constitution. But you know what? I got a funny feeling it's happening not just in Rhode Island where people are
so it's happening. There's a movement.
Groups
all over.
Are lobbying for these constitutional conventions. And, I was driving home today, and there was this billboard, and this is what really kind of brought to my forefront was like, vote no on 3, which is for our if I forget, it was in favor of the Constitutional Convention, and then like they put up the big sign of Studio 38, that studio that football player guy bought, and the state paid for essentially through bonds, and it went belly up within a year. But you know what, folks, think about this. Even if we do have a constitutional convention, who's gonna be the people that you trust to rewrite your Constitution.
Well,
They're not going to stop with one issue that some of these lobbying groups might tell you. Oh yeah, we just want to fix this portion of the Constitution.
Yeah, well, I think
it doesn't necessarily stop there.
Why would you feel the need to see? That's a form of overthrowing the government right there, and yet there's laws that say you can't do it, but they want to rewrite the Constitution, which would rewrite the government, which basically is a conspiracy to overthrow the existing government as it exists on paper, through that Constitution.
Let me tell you, it's the same people that are in office now, or that they're trying to be voted into these offices. They're going to be just as susceptible to these large lobbying firms that really do have an agenda. And, and the people that okayed the bonding for Studio 38, they're going to be the same ones that can be influenced to rewrite the Constitution according to whoever has the bigger paycheck to fund these groups.
Mm-hmm.
That are that funding.
A lot of it is Agenda 21. Mayor Bloomberg is putting in millions and millions of dollars to get things, to get laws passed that otherwise people would not vote for.
I mean, I kind of wonder if Studio 38 wasn't all pre-planned. Hey, you know what? Let's have this state pay for this outrageous studio, these outrageous prices. And then that will help our agenda with voting in the Constitutional Convention.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. They do the Constitutional Convention every 10 years, or they try to do it every 10 years.
You can't let yourself be hoodwinked.
Yeah, they plan for it. If they fail this time, they're going to start working on the next 10 years. How are we going to make it happen 10 years from now? Because they want to bring in a socialist, communist. They want to overthrow America. This is seditious conspiracy. Coincidentally, it just all kind of came out in this show as a special edition. But there's also some other conspiracies going on. I want to play this final clip. It's going to be about 7 minutes. That's going to finish up our show. So, in the spirit of Halloween, I'm going to play this last clip that has to do with some ancient, conspiracy. And then we'll be back later in the week, try to get back into some more of these topics concerning government and politics with the election coming up. I think we're going to have an election show. Probably do 2 hours again on Friday because there's so much to talk about. All right?
Sounds good.
All right, this is Northern Prosperity Law Center, SovereignRadio.com. I'm going to play this final clip, and then we'll close it out for this evening, and we'll be back on Friday.
I can really get into this one. Whew! 2015. You say now, Brother Stone, what about 2015? Okay, 2015 is interesting, and I'll explain to you why. The Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar and not a solar calendar. Most of you know that. You've heard us talk about that. They use the moon. The moon signifies the new moon. They start counting. Let me explain it to you this way. It takes the moon, from the moon to go to total darkness to total light, it takes 29 and a half days. Let's just say almost 30 days. Now, Israel's calendar is based on the moon. When you see a full moon, for example, that's when you do certain things. Rosh Hashanah is the only feast of the 7 that starts on when there is no moon. There's no moon in the sky. It's the new moon. There's no moon. Then when you see the sliver of the moon, that's when they blow the trumpet and they announce Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year. Now they can time it by a calendar. In the time of Jesus, listen, no man knew the day or the hour. You'll get it in a minute. We're talking about the Feast of Trumpets, which is feast number 5 of the 7 feasts of Israel that happens on the 7th month, the first day. So there was a 40-hour... You'll get this in a minute. There was a 48-hour window that no man knew when the trumpet was going to sound. But when they saw the sliver of the moon, 2 witnesses went to the Sanhedrin, told the high priest, confirm that the sliver of the moon was seen, and that's when they knew to blow the trumpet and announce that it was now the Jewish Feast of Trumpets. All right, keep that in mind, because that is a prophetic picture, actually, of the rapture of the church. No man knowing the day and the hour, and suddenly the trumpets were sounding. Having said that, Israel looks at the moon this way. An old rabbi said this. He said, here's the moon. You got 30 days from darkness to full, from full darkness. So you got 15 days from darkness to full, 15 days from full to darkness. He said, it's Israel. He said, with Abraham, we were nothing. But in 15 generations, representing 15 days, we became full. And that was King Solomon's time, the greatest time of Israel's history, when the Holy Temple was built and the Shekinah glory came. But then, 15 generations later, representing the next 15 days on the calendar, the moon goes from full to total darkness. He said that's Solomon to the Babylonian captivity, which was 15 generations. That's how important that's how important anything that happens to the moon is to the Jewish people. Now, listen carefully. There is a prophecy that's found in Joel 2:21 and Acts 2:20, and here's what it says. The sun, that's why I've got this banner. You're probably saying, when's he going to get to this banner? The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon shall be turned into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes. Now, that is, ladies and gentlemen, a perplexing prophecy. Do you know why? Because the sun is not going to burn out. If the sun burns out, we're all dead. And if we're all dead, then the Bible can't be true, because we're going to rule on earth 1,000 years, and the seasons are going to continue, and there's going to be harvesting and planting. So it can't mean that the sun is going to completely burn out, and that's a sign that Jesus is coming. Or the moon turning into blood. What does that mean? You know, years ago when they landed on the moon, we had a little sister at my dad's church. She was a little Pentecostal lady, and she just vowed up and down that that didn't happen. Then when she found out that it really did happen, she said, "Preacher, I think I got a revelation on how that moon's going to turn to blood." And Dad said, "Well, sister, what do you think it is?" She said, "The Russians and the Americans are going to send spaceships up there and kill each other." Okay. I said, "Dad, when people used to come up to you and just say weird stuff, what would you say?" I said, "Well, I'd usually just tell them they probably had too many pinto beans before they went to bed last night." He said, "I'd say it in a nice way." All right. This is very important. If you've never heard this, I'm going to explain to you the sun being turned to darkness and the moon into blood. I'm going to read to you from the Jewish Talmud, which is the Jewish commentary. The Talmud has a lot to say about lunar eclipses. In Sukkot 29a, it is written, "When the moon is in eclipse, it is a bad omen for Israel. If the face is as red as blood, it is a sign that the sword or a war is coming to the world." Wow. In 1996, there were two major eclipses that fell on Jewish feasts, and the rabbis began to teach within just a few years the world would be at war. Guess what? We were. The war on terror. And everybody has one way or the other been drawn into that war. The rabbis taught when the sun is in eclipse, it's a bad omen for the world. Another observation is made by Rabbi Meir. When the luminaries are in eclipse, it's a bad omen for Israel. According to the rabbinical interpretation of eclipses, a solar eclipse, now you know what that is, a solar eclipse, sun goes dark, is a sign of trouble for the world, but a lunar eclipse is a bad sign for Israel. Now remember that a blood moon, when the moon goes into eclipse and looks like blood, it is a terrible sign for Israel. Now, how do they know that? They have tracked these things for centuries. And they've noticed that every time they get a blood moon, when in a short time Israel goes into some kind of terrible conflict internally, conflict externally, or a war of some kind. That's how they've tracked this for probably thousands of years, to be honest with you. Now, watch this. The most eclipses that can occur in 1 year is 7. Twice in the 20th century, there were 7 total eclipses. Now, does anybody want to know the years? Nod your head and I'll tell you the years. 1917 and 1973. Why is that important? When 7 eclipses happened in 1917, watch what happens. Communism settles into the world. The Bolshevik Revolution, or the Russian communism revolution is what it became. Number 2, the Balfour Declaration was signed giving Jews access back to Israel. Number 3, General Allenby took Jerusalem back from the Turks after 400 years. You don't want me to keep going. 1917 was one of the biggest prophetic years relating to the Jews in Israel that they'd had since the destruction of the temple, folks. 1973, guess what happened that year? Yom Kippur War, 7 eclipses. Yom Kippur War, the Arab nations secretly attacked Israel during the Feast of Yom Kippur when all the Jews were praying in synagogues and fasting. And only by a divine miracle of God were they stopped, and Israel could have suffered greatly. They lost more men during the Yom Kippur War than any other previous war. 1973, you can remember, we lived in Washington, D.C. 73, 74, you had the oil embargo. 73, 74, you had Richard Nixon resigning. You had 27 nations in famine in 1973. In other words, the cosmic activity of 7 eclipses showed prophetic indicators that things were happening globally and to Israel at the same time. 1917, 1973.
Okay, you've been listening to SovereignRadio.com. This is Northern Prosperity Law Center. We'll be signing off till Friday. That's Halloween. We'll see you then.